A widowed millionaire lived between empty commitments and painful silences. But the gardener, with her simple hands, made his daughter laugh like never before. When the millionaire saw the girl smile for the first time in months, something shifted inside him. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you're watching. Stay with us. The December snow fell silently outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Rafael Bello's penthouse office. 63 floors above the city, he watched as tiny figures scurried across the streets below like ants. From this height, everyone looked insignificant, a perspective that had served him well in building Bello Enterprises into one of America's most formidable luxury conglomerates. "Mr. Bello, your 4 o'clock appointment is here," his assistant's voice announced through the intercom. Rafael adjusted his custom Italian tie and smoothed back his salt and pepper hair. At 52, he maintained the sharp, commanding presence that had intimidated competitors and impressed investors for decades. "Send them in," he replied, his voice deep and controlled. 3 board members entered, followed by a team of lawyers and financial advisors. The quarterly report presentation began immediately. Profits up 12%, new acquisitions in Milan and Dubai, celebrity endorsements secured for the spring collection. But even as Rafael nodded and asked pointed questions about market projections, his mind drifted elsewhere. "And the Hamptons property renovation is progressing ahead of schedule," Philip Dawson, his CFO, was saying. "We should have it ready for the summer charity gala." Rafael's jaw tightened. The Hamptons house, Elizabeth's favorite place. He hadn't set foot there since the accident 18 months ago. "Mr. Bello, do you agree with the proposal?" He blinked, refocusing. "Yes, move forward with the renovations." He glanced at his watch. "If there's nothing else urgent, I need to leave for another commitment." The meeting disbanded efficiently. As the executives filed out, Philip lingered behind. "Rafael," he said, dropping the formality now that they were alone, "the board is impressed with how you've kept everything running, especially considering everything, but have you thought about what we discussed? Taking some time off?" Rafael's expression hardened. "The company needs consistency right now. I'm fine." "You haven't taken a single day since—" "I said I'm fine." His tone ended the conversation. After Philip left, Rafael pressed a button on his desk phone. "Have my driver bring the car around. I'm heading home." The sleek black Mercedes wound through Manhattan traffic toward the Upper East Side brownstone, where Rafael lived with his daughter Amelia. At 13, she had once been vivacious and talkative. Now she was as silent as the wheelchair she depended on, another casualty of the car accident that had claimed her mother's life. When Rafael arrived home, Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper, met him at the door with a concerned expression. "How was she today?" he asked, removing his coat. "She refused her physical therapy again and she barely touched her lunch." Rafael nodded, unsurprised. "Where is she now?" "In the solarium. Dr. Harrison is with her." He found them there. Dr. Rachel Harrison, Amelia's child psychologist, sitting patiently across from his daughter. Amelia stared out the window, her long brown hair falling like a curtain around her face. Her wheelchair was positioned away from both the doctor and the entrance, a clear statement of her desire for isolation. "Hello, Rafael," Dr. Harrison said softly, standing to greet him. "We were just finishing up." Amelia didn't turn to acknowledge her father's presence. "Any progress?" Rafael asked, too quietly for Amelia to hear. The therapist's expression was professional, but tinged with frustration. "Perhaps we could speak privately." In the hallway, Dr. Harrison's calm demeanor shifted to concern. "Mr. Bello, Amelia hasn't spoken a single word during our last 3 sessions. Her withdrawal is deepening. I'm becoming concerned about depression." "You've been seeing her for 6 months. Shouldn't we be seeing some improvement by now?" The doctor hesitated. "Trauma recovery isn't linear, especially in children, but I wonder if the environment here might be contributing to her isolation." Rafael frowned. "This is her home." "Yes, but it's also a place filled with memories and perhaps too much perfection. Everything here is immaculate, controlled. Sometimes healing requires a little mess, a little unpredictability. What exactly are you suggesting? Perhaps a change of scenery. You mentioned a house in the Hamptons. Raphael felt that familiar tightness in his chest. That's not possible. Right now. Dr. Harrison nodded, recognizing the boundary. Then perhaps some changes here. The garden outside the solarium. Amelia used to mention how much she loved it. But Mrs. Peterson said it's been neglected since Elizabeth died, Raphael finished bluntly. Yes, maybe bringing some life back to that space could help. After the therapist left, Raphael walked slowly back to the solarium. Amelia remained motionless, staring out at the neglected garden, where overgrown bushes and dead plants created a stark, winter landscape. "Amelia," he said gently, "would you like to have dinner together tonight?" No response. Her small hands rested limply in her lap. "I could have Mrs. Peterson prepare your favorite pasta." It had been Elizabeth who always knew their daughter's favorite foods, favorite colors, favorite everything. Raphael was still learning, fumbling through parenthood alone. When Amelia finally turned to look at him, her eyes, so much like her mother's, were empty. She wheeled herself past him without a word, heading toward her room. Later that night, unable to sleep, Raphael stood at his office window overlooking the abandoned garden. Dr. Harrison's words echoed in his mind. Perhaps she was right. The pristine emptiness of their home reflected the emotional void they both lived in. His phone buzzed with a late-night email from Tokyo, another acquisition opportunity. Work had always been his refuge, but lately even that felt hollow. He made a decision. Opening his laptop, he typed, "Experienced gardener, immediate start," into a job listing site and posted it before he could reconsider. 3 days later, on a rare morning when Raphael was working from home, Mrs. Peterson knocked on his office. "Oh, Mr. Bello, there's someone here about the gardening position." Raphael checked his watch. "Send them in." He expected one of the professional landscapers who had dominated the applicant pool, men in pressed uniforms with portfolios of perfectly manicured estates. Instead, a woman in worn jeans and a practical jacket stepped into his office. Her curly auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her face, free of makeup, showed light freckles across the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Bello, I'm Sarah Winters, about the gardening position." Her handshake was firm, her Nebraska accent subtle but noticeable. Raphael gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Your resume was sparse." She smiled, unintimidated. "I don't have formal landscaping certificates, if that's what you mean. But I've been growing things since I could walk. My grandparents owned a nursery in Lincoln, and I worked there until I was 17. "And since then?" A shadow passed briefly across her face. "I've moved around, worked on community gardens in Chicago, spent 2 years on an organic farm in Vermont. Most recently, I've been helping with urban garden initiatives in Brooklyn." Raphael studied her. There was something direct and unpretentious about her that felt out of place in his carefully curated world. This project would require bringing her neglected garden back to life. It's been untended for some time. "The best gardens often come from places that seem beyond saving," she replied. "May I see it?" He led her through the house to the solarium. As they passed the main staircase, a door clicked shut from the upper floor. Amelia, no doubt, retreating from the presence of a stranger. When Sarah stepped into the solarium and saw the garden beyond, she didn't mask her reaction. Oh my! The space that had once been Elizabeth's pride was now a tangle of overgrown shrubs, withered plants and neglect. The small fountain in the center had long stopped running, its basin filled with dead leaves. "It's a disaster," Raphael acknowledged. But Sarah was already moving toward the door that led outside. "May I?" In the cold December air, she walked the perimeter of the garden, occasionally kneeling to examine the soil or touch a plant. Raphael watched from the doorway, struck by how comfortable she seemed in the chaos. "The bones are good," she said finally, returning to him. "The Japanese maple is salvageable. The rose bushes will need severe pruning, but they're fighters. We'd need to clear everything, amend the soil, and replant in sections." She looked directly at him. "It would take time, and it wouldn't be tidy. For a while. How long? To make it functional, a few weeks, to make it beautiful again? That depends on how much you're willing to let it evolve. Something in her phrasing caught Raphael off guard. Before he could question it, movement from inside the solarium drew his attention. Amelia had wheeled herself to the glass, watching them intently. When she realized her father had noticed, she quickly retreated. "My daughter," Raphael explained. She used to love the garden." Sarah nodded, not pressing for details. Children have good instincts about growing things. Raphael made his decision. "When can you start?" "Tomorrow morning." As Sarah outlined her initial plans and requirements, Raphael found himself wondering if Dr. Harrison would approve of this impulsive hire, a woman with dirt under her fingernails and no formal credentials, trusted to transform the space his broken family needed to heal. What he couldn't know then was that Sarah Winters carried secrets of her own, secrets that would soon intertwine with the Bello family in ways none of them could predict. The simple act of hiring a gardener was about to complicate his carefully controlled existence in ways Raphael Bello, for all his business acumen and strategic foresight, could never have anticipated. The January morning arrived with an unexpected warmth, a brief respite from winter's grip on New York City. Sarah Winters had been working in the Bello garden for 3 weeks, transforming the neglected space bit by bit. Today she knelt in the damp soil, carefully pruning the dormant rose bushes that had once been the pride of the garden. From inside the solarium, Amelia watched. Sarah had grown accustomed to the girl's silent observation. Each day the wheelchair would appear at the glass, and each day Sarah would acknowledge her with a simple wave before continuing her work. No pressure, no expectations, just the quiet recognition of another presence. "Good morning," a deep voice called from the door. Raphael Bello stepped into the garden, dressed impeccably as always, though he'd forgone his usual suit for dark jeans and a cashmere sweater. It was Saturday. "Mr. Bello," Sarah greeted him, rising and brushing soil from her gloves. "I wasn't expecting you to be home today." An unexpected cancellation. He surveyed the progress. The chaos had given way to thoughtful order, pruned. Shrubs, cleared beds, and even a few winter-hardy plants already in the ground. "It's looking much better." "Thank you." She gestured to several containers near the shed. "The soil amendments arrived yesterday. Once those are worked in, we can start planning the spring plantings." Raphael nodded, his gaze drifting to the solarium windows where Amelia's wheelchair was still visible. "She watches you every day." Sarah followed his gaze. "She does." Has she spoken to you at all?" "Not yet, but she left something for me yesterday." Sarah reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. "It was sitting on my tool bag when I arrived." Raphael took the paper, unfolding it carefully. A simple drawing, flowers, a tree, and what looked like a butterfly. In the corner, a tiny initial, A. "This is the first time she's drawn anything since the accident," he said, his voice unexpectedly thick with emotion. Sarah smiled. "She's communicating in her own way. Sometimes words are too hard." Raphael studied the drawing again before handing it back. "Dr. Harrison, Amelia's therapist, is coming this afternoon. She'll be pleased to see this." As if on cue, Mrs. Peterson appeared at the door. "Mr. Bello, you have a call from Tokyo. They say it's urgent." Raphael's expression shifted, the brief moment of openness replaced by his familiar business mask. "Excuse me," he said to Sarah, already turning toward the house. Later that afternoon, as Sarah was preparing to leave, she encountered Dr. Harrison in the hallway. The therapist introduced herself with professional warmth. "I've heard about the garden restoration," Dr. Harrison said. "It seems to be having a positive effect already." Sarah nodded. "Gardens have a way of healing people along with the plants. I noticed Amelia was more responsive today, not speaking yet, but more engaged." The therapist hesitated. "Mr. Bello mentioned you're from Nebraska originally?" "Lincoln, yes. Though I've moved around quite a bit since then." Something in the doctor's expression shifted slightly, a professional assessment forming. "It must be challenging, starting over in different places." Life rarely goes according to plan, Sarah replied simply. But new soil can help things grow in unexpected ways. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of Amelia's wheelchair approaching. The girl paused at the sight of them talking, her expression guarded. "Hello, Amelia," Sarah said casually, as if they chatted every day. "I was just telling Dr. Harrison about the butterfly bush we're going to plant in spring. They attract monarchs. Did you know they migrate all the way from Mexico?" Amelia didn't respond, but her eyes flickered with interest. "I should get going," Sarah said, gathering her things. "See you tomorrow, Amelia. Maybe you can help me decide where to put that bird feeder." As Sarah left, she felt Dr. Harrison's analytical gaze following her. The therapist was clearly wondering what it was about this unassuming gardener that had captured Amelia's attention when expensive specialists had failed. The next day, Sunday, Sarah arrived to find Raphael in the garden, dressed in his weekend attire, attempting to prune a shrub with awkward determination. "Mr. Bello?" she called, surprised. He turned, slightly embarrassed. "I thought I might help today, if that's acceptable." Sarah bit back a smile at his formal phrasing. "Of course, though you might want these." She handed him a pair of proper gardening gloves to replace the leather dress gloves he was wearing. They worked side by side for an hour, Sarah gently correcting his technique and explaining the reasons behind each task. Raphael was a quick study, applying the same focused attention he gave to business acquisitions to the art of garden restoration. "You know," Sarah said as they rested, drinking water in the weak winter sunlight, "gardens are a lot like people. Sometimes what looks dead is just dormant, waiting for the right conditions to come back to life." Raphael considered this. And what are the right conditions? Patience, care, and sometimes the courage to cut away what's no longer serving. She demonstrated by decisively pruning a damaged branch. It seems harsh, but it allows for new growth. From the solarium windows, Amelia watched them. When Sarah waved, the girl hesitantly raised her hand in return, the first voluntary response she'd shown in months. The weeks passed, and winter gradually loosened its grip on the city. The garden transformation continued, and with it, subtle changes in the Bello household. Raphael began spending more Saturdays at home, often ending up in the garden with Sarah. Amelia's silent observations grew longer, and occasionally Sarah would find small objects left by her tools, a colorful stone, a page from a botanical book, once even a small origami bird. One particularly mild February day, Sarah arrived to find Amelia already in the solarium, a sketchbook open in her lap. "Good morning," Sarah called through the glass door. To her surprise, Amelia wheeled herself forward and unlocked the door. "Would you like to come outside today?" Sarah asked gently. Amelia hesitated, then nodded. Raphael, coming down for breakfast, froze at the sight of Mrs. Peterson, helping Amelia navigate her wheelchair over the garden threshold. It was the first time his daughter had voluntarily gone outside since returning from the hospital. "Amelia wants to help plant the pansies," Sarah explained, as if this were perfectly ordinary and not the breakthrough they all knew it was. That morning, the three of them worked together in the garden. Amelia's small hands pressed seedlings into the soil, while Sarah explained the needs of each plant. Raphael moved between them, awkward but determined, following Sarah's instructions with uncharacteristic humility. When Amelia's occupational therapist arrived for her session, she was astonished to find her patient with soil-stained hands and the ghost of a smile on her face. "The garden is good therapy," Sarah said simply when the specialist questioned her. Dr. Harrison, visiting later that week, noted the changes in her session report. Amelia showed marked improvement today. She used the communication board to express preferences for the first time in months. When asked about garden activities, she pointed to happy and again. Raphael read the report in his office. Emotions he'd kept rigidly controlled for 18 months threatening to surface. He'd built an empire, restructured failing companies, negotiated billion-dollar deals, but he'd been helpless to reach his own daughter, until Sarah Winters arrived with her dirt-stained genes and simple wisdom. That evening, he found Sarah still working as dusk fell, installing small solar lights along the garden path. "You're here late," he observed. Wanted to finish this before the weather turns. The forecast says rain tomorrow. She stood, brushing off her knees. Besides, I promised Amelia the lights would be ready for her morning therapy session. You made a promise to Amelia? Did she speak to you? Sarah smiled. Not with words, but she found a picture of garden lights in a magazine and left it for me. That's communication. Raphael studied her in the fading light. You're very good with her. She's a remarkable girl. She just needs people to understand that healing follows its own timeline. Dr. Harrison mentioned something similar, but coming from you, he trailed off. Coming from me, it's not wrapped in clinical terminology, Sarah suggested with a hint of amusement. Raphael found himself smiling, a genuine expression that felt foreign on his face. Exactly. As they stood in the garden, that was slowly coming back to life, something shifted between them, a subtle recognition of shared purpose, of barriers beginning to crumble. Would you like some tea before you go? Raphael asked impulsively. It's getting cold. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Tea would be nice. In the kitchen, away from the formality of scheduled meals with silent Amelia and hovering staff, they found an unexpected ease. Sarah spoke of her grandparents' nursery in Nebraska, of the first tomato she'd grown at age 4, of the community garden in Chicago that had helped veterans cope with PTSD. Raphael found himself sharing, too, about Elizabeth's passion for the garden, about his own childhood in a Connecticut suburb where his father had been too busy building his own business to notice his son's accomplishments. Is that why you work so much? Sarah asked, her directness catching him off guard. I work because there's work to be done, he replied automatically. Everyone needs purpose, Sarah acknowledged, but sometimes we hide in purpose to avoid pain. Raphael studied her, feeling inexplicably seen in a way that both comforted and unsettled him. You're very perceptive for a gardener. Plants teach you to notice the subtle signs of what's really happening beneath the surface. Later, walking her to the door, Raphael was struck by an impulse he hadn't felt in years. Sarah, would you and Amelia consider joining me for dinner sometime? Not here. Somewhere else. A change of scenery. Sarah's expression registered surprise, then consideration. I think Amelia would like that, and so would I. After she left, Raphael stood in the foyer, analyzing his own motivations with the same scrutiny he applied to business decisions. This wasn't just about Amelia's therapy anymore. Something was growing in the careful space between gardener and client, something unplanned and potentially complicated. But for the first time since the accident, Raphael Bello found himself looking forward to tomorrow, not for board meetings or investment returns, but for the simple pleasure of walking through a garden slowly coming back to life, guided by a woman who understood that the most important growth often happens in the places where light finds its way through the cracks. What he couldn't yet see was that Sarah's own carefully tended secrets were about to emerge, secrets that would test everything they were slowly building together. March arrived with surprising gentleness, bringing soft rains and early buds to the Bello garden. Inside the brownstone, another kind of thawing was taking place. Amelia had begun speaking again, first in whispers to Sarah, then in short sentences during therapy sessions, and finally, tentatively, to her father. She asked for pancakes. This morning, Raphael told Sarah as they walked through the garden on a Saturday inspection, specifically blueberry pancakes. Elizabeth used to make them every weekend. Sarah smiled. That's wonderful. Did you make them? I tried. Raphael's expression was sheepish. Mrs. Peterson had to rescue the operation. The important thing is that she asked. Sarah paused by the newly installed bench beneath the Japanese maple, and that you tried. The bench had been Raphael's idea, a place where Amelia could sit when she didn't want to stay in her wheelchair. The physical therapist had approved, noting that any motivation for the girl to strengthen her upper body by transferring herself was beneficial. Dr. Harrison thinks Amelia is ready for a change of scenery, Raphael said, following a line of thought he'd been considering for weeks. Perhaps a day trip somewhere. The botanical gardens in Brooklyn are beautiful this time of year, Sarah suggested. The conservatory would be accessible for her wheelchair. Raphael nodded, then hesitated. I was wondering if you might join us. Amelia seems most comfortable when you're around. The invitation hung between them, carrying weight beyond a simple outing. Their relationship had evolved over the past months. Professional but increasingly personal. The dinners Raphael had suggested had become a weekly tradition, sometimes at restaurants, but more often in the kitchen of the brownstone, with Amelia, joining them and occasionally even contributing to the conversation. I'd like that, Sarah answered simply. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden trip was scheduled for the following Saturday. When the day arrived, clear and mild, Raphael found himself unusually nervous, checking his watch repeatedly and changing his sweater twice before settling on a blue cashmere that Elizabeth had once said matched his eyes. Amelia, too, seemed both excited and anxious, repeatedly asking Sarah questions about the garden as they drove through Manhattan in Raphael's Mercedes, with Johnson, his longtime driver, at the wheel. "Will there be butterflies yet?" Amelia asked, her voice soft but clear. "A few early ones, maybe," Sarah replied from the front passenger seat. "Definitely some in the conservatory, but the big butterfly rush comes in late spring." Raphael watched his daughter in the rear-view mirror, still amazed at the transformation of recent weeks. Dr. Harrison called it remarkable progress and had suggested reducing their sessions to once a week. The physical therapist reported improved engagement and effort. Even Amelia's tutor had noted greater concentration and interest in her studies. The botanical garden was awakening from winter, with early daffodils and cherry blossoms creating splashes of color. Amelia's eyes widened as they entered the conservatory, the way lush tropical plants and humid warmth enveloping them. "Look, Dad," she exclaimed, pointing to a small blue butterfly that had landed on a nearby leaf. Raphael couldn't remember the last time he'd heard such excitement in her voice. They spent the morning exploring the gardens, with Sarah providing botanical information that supplemented the plaques and guides. Her knowledge impressed Raphael, who found himself watching her as much as the gardens, the animated way she spoke about plants, how she crouched at Amelia's level to show her the details of a particular flower, the genuine delight she took in their reactions. During lunch at the garden cafe, Amelia asked about Sarah's childhood in Nebraska. "Grandma's greenhouse was my favorite place," Sarah told her, describing rows of seedlings and the smell of damp earth. "I used to pretend I was exploring a jungle." "What about your parents?" Amelia asked innocently. A shadow crossed Sarah's face. "My mother wasn't around much, and my father, well, I didn't know him." Raphael noticed her discomfort and gently redirected the conversation. Later, as Amelia was occupied watching koi in a small pond, he apologized. "You don't need to apologize," Sarah said. "Family is complicated for everyone. Still, I've noticed you rarely talk about your past." She met his gaze directly. "Some chapters are harder to revisit than others." Before Raphael could respond, Amelia called them over to see a particularly large fish. The moment passed, but Raphael found himself wondering about the parts of Sarah's life she kept carefully pruned away, like the dead branches she removed from the garden to make way for new growth. As they were preparing to leave, Amelia's wheelchair caught on an uneven section of pavement. Raphael reached to steady her, but Sarah was quicker, her hand catching Amelia's arm before she could topple forward. "Thanks," Amelia said, breathless from the momentary scare. "Always here to catch you," Sarah replied with a smile. It was then that Raphael noticed something, a small mark on Sarah's wrist, exposed when her sleeve rode up during the quick movement. A tiny strawberry-shaped birthmark, distinctive and familiar. He stared at it, a cold feeling spreading through his chest. "Raphael, are you okay?" Sarah was looking at him with concern. "Fine," he said automatically, but his mind was racing. The birthmark was identical to one Amelia had on her shoulder, a distinctive feature Elizabeth had always called her little strawberry. The drive. Home was quieter, with Raphael lost in thought while Amelia and Sarah discussed plans for spring planting. That night, after Amelia was asleep and Sarah had gone home, Raphael sat in his study, the adoption files spread before him. Elizabeth had handled most of the arrangements 13 years ago when they'd decided to adopt after years of infertility. The timing had been unexpectedly quick. A young mother unable to care for her newborn, the private adoption agency they'd registered with calling them only weeks after they'd completed their paperwork. Raphael had been traveling on business when the call came. By the time he returned, Elizabeth had already brought baby Amelia home. He'd fallen in love with the tiny girl instantly, never questioning the providence that had brought her to them. Now, with trembling hands, he reviewed the sparse documentation. The birth mother's name was listed as Jane Smith, obviously a pseudonym provided by the agency, age 17, from Nebraska. No further information about family background or medical history had been provided, unusual for even a closed adoption. Nebraska. Sarah was from Nebraska, and her age, if she had been 13 years ago. It couldn't be coincidence. The birthmark, the Nebraska connection, Sarah's reluctance to discuss her past. And there was something else, something that had been nagging at him subconsciously for months. The shape of Sarah's smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners. The resemblance to Amelia was subtle but undeniable. The revelation left Raphael reeling. Had Sarah known all along? Had she deliberately sought out this position to get close to Amelia? Was everything, the garden transformation, Amelia's progress, even their growing closeness, part of some elaborate plan? His business instincts kicked in, protect assets, gather information, control the situation. But this wasn't business. This was his family, his daughter, what was Sarah to him now? The woman who was healing his broken family, or someone with a hidden agenda who had inserted herself into their lives under false pretenses? The next morning, Raphael called his private investigator. "I need everything you can find on Sarah Winters, currently residing in Brooklyn. Focus on her time in Nebraska, particularly about 13 years ago." 3 days later, the PI delivered a thin file. Sarah Winters had indeed been born and raised in Lincoln, Nebraska. Her grandparents had owned Winters Nursery until their passing 10 years ago. Her mother, Catherine Winters, had struggled with addiction and had been in and out of rehabilitation facilities throughout Sarah's childhood. There was no father, listed on her birth certificate. And most significantly, hospital records confirmed that Sarah had given birth at Lincoln Memorial Hospital at age 17, exactly 13 years ago, matching Amelia's birthday. The records indicated the baby had been placed for adoption through Hope Bridge Adoptions, the same agency the Blackwells had used. Raphael felt the floor dropping away beneath him. Sarah was Amelia's biological mother. She had come into their lives deliberately, working her way into their family, gaining their trust, forming a bond with Amelia. But to what end? Was she planning to reveal herself to Amelia, to try to reclaim her daughter, to demand some kind of recognition or compensation? He needed to confront her, but not impulsively. First, he needed legal advice. A call to his attorney confirmed what he already suspected. As the legal adoptive parent with full custody, he had all parental rights. Sarah had no legal claim to Amelia, regardless of biological connection. Armed with this information, Raphael prepared to confront Sarah. But when she arrived for work the next day, something stopped him. Amelia was in the garden already, showing Sarah a science project she'd completed for her tutor, the first academic work she'd shown any pride in since the accident. "This is amazing, Amelia," Sarah was saying, genuinely impressed by the small ecosystem the girl had created in a terrarium. "You've got a real talent for understanding how different elements work together." Amelia beamed at the praise. "Miss Wilson says I could be a botanist someday." "You could be anything you set your mind to," Sarah told her. Watching them, Raphael couldn't bring himself to shatter the fragile happiness that had finally returned to his daughter's life. He needed more time to think, to plan his approach. That evening, after Sarah had left, he requested that Dr. Harrison come for an unscheduled consultation. In his office, with the door firmly closed, he revealed what he had discovered. The therapist's reaction surprised him. Rather than sharing his alarm, she seemed thoughtful. "The connection Sarah has formed with Amelia makes sense now," she said. "But Raphael, have you considered that her presence might actually be beneficial for Amelia's recovery?" Beneficial? She lied to us. She infiltrated our home under false pretenses. Did she? Did she ever claim she had no connection to Amelia? She never revealed she was Amelia's birth mother. Perhaps she was afraid of how you would react, exactly as you're reacting now. Dr. Harrison's voice was calm, professional. From a therapeutic perspective, the bond between them has been instrumental in Amelia's progress. Severing that connection abruptly could be devastating. Raphael paced the office. "So I'm supposed to just allow this deception to continue, to have someone in our home who has been lying to us? I'm suggesting you consider the whole picture before making any decisions. Observe their interactions, try to understand Sarah's motivations, and most importantly, consider what would be best for Amelia." Later that night, alone in his study, Raphael poured himself a rare glass of whiskey. The amber liquid reminded him of Sarah's eyes in the sunlight as she worked in the garden. Those same eyes that now held a different meaning, they were the eyes his daughter had inherited, a connection he had never noticed until now. The betrayal stung deeply. Yet beneath the anger and hurt, uncomfortable questions surfaced. What would have happened if Sarah hadn't entered their lives? Would Amelia still be silent, withdrawn, slipping further away from him with each passing day? And what of his own? Feelings for Sarah? The quiet dinners, the shared laughter, the way his heart lightened when she arrived each morning. These weren't just about Amelia's recovery. Something had been growing between them, something he hadn't felt since Elizabeth. His phone buzzed, a text from Philip Dawson about the Dubai acquisition. The business world continued its relentless pace, demanding his attention, offering the familiar escape of spreadsheets and strategic decisions rather than the messy complexities of human emotions. Raphael set the phone aside without responding, a decision that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Some matters required presence, not escape. Tomorrow he would speak with Sarah, but first he needed to sit with this revelation, to understand his own heart before confronting hers. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Raphael had barely slept, rehearsing conversations in his mind throughout the night. When Sarah arrived, he was waiting in the garden, seated on the bench beneath the Japanese maple. "Good morning," she greeted him, setting down her tool bag. Her smile faltered when she saw his expression. "Is everything all right?" "I'm not sure," Raphael replied honestly. "I think we need to talk, Sarah." She hesitated, then sat beside him, a careful distance between them. "About what?" Raphael took a deep breath. "About why you're really here, about your connection to Amelia." The color drained from Sarah's face. She looked away, her hands gripping the edge of the bench. "How did you find out?" "The birthmark. Amelia has the same one, and once I saw it, other things started making sense. Your background in Nebraska, your age, the timing." Sarah closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were filled with tears. "I never meant to deceive you. At first, I didn't know. When I answered your job listing, it was just that, a job. I needed work, and gardening is what I know." "When did you realize who Amelia was?" "The second day. I saw her birth date on a calendar in the kitchen. Mrs. Peterson had marked it. And then I noticed the birthmark during physical therapy. It was overwhelming." "Why didn't you leave?" "Or tell me?" Sarah wiped away a tear. "I was going to leave. I packed my things that night, but then..." She looked toward the house. "Then I saw her, really saw her. This beautiful, broken girl who needed help, who needed me, even if she didn't know why. I couldn't walk away again." "Again?" Raphael's voice hardened. "You gave her up for adoption." "I was 17, Sarah said quietly. "My mother was in rehab. My grandparents were elderly and struggling to keep their nursery afloat. The father was not in the picture. I had no resources, no support. The agency promised me she would go to a loving family who could give her everything I couldn't." Raphael studied her face. looking for manipulation or deceit, but finding only raw pain and honesty. And now? What do you want now, Sarah? I don't want to take her from you, she said quickly. You're her father, the only father she's ever known. I just wanted to be part of her life somehow. To know she was okay, to help her heal if I could. She met his gaze directly. These months with both of you have been the most meaningful of my life, but I understand if you want me to go. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken emotions. From inside the house came the sound of Amelia's wheelchair approaching the solarium. Does she know? Raphael asked. Sarah shook her head. No, I would never tell her without your permission. Raphael stood, needing space to think. I need time. This is a lot to process. I understand. Sarah rose too, her posture resigned. Should I leave? Raphael looked toward the solarium, where Amelia was now watching them with curious eyes. No, not yet. We need to think about what's best for her. As Sarah gathered her tools and began working in a distant corner of the garden, Raphael went inside to greet his daughter, his mind racing with impossible choices and consequences that would reshape all their lives, regardless of what he decided. April. Showers battered the windows of Raphael Bellows' Manhattan office as he stared unseeing at the quarterly reports on his desk. 2 weeks had passed since his confrontation with Sarah, 2 weeks of careful distance and polite interactions, while he grappled with what to do next. Mr. Bellow? His assistant's voice interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Harrington is here to see you. Raphael straightened, pushing personal concerns aside. Send him in. James Harrington entered with the confident stride of a man accustomed to power. As CEO of Meridian Luxury Holdings, he'd been both competitor and occasional ally to Bellow Enterprises for decades. Raphael, he greeted, settling into the chair across from the desk. You're looking distracted. Not like you at all. Just contemplating the Asian market projections, Raphael lied smoothly. What brings you here, James? The Milano acquisition? Harrington's smile didn't reach his eyes. Actually, I came about a more personal matter. He placed a manila folder on the desk. I thought you might find this interesting. Raphael opened the folder to find photographs. Sarah entering his brownstone, Sarah and Amelia in the garden, Sarah and Raphael at the restaurant where they'd had dinner last month. What is this? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Due diligence, Harrington replied. When I heard Bellow had hired some unknown gardener who was suddenly spending time with his daughter and him, I got curious. I believe in knowing my colleague's potential, vulnerabilities. Raphael closed the folder. You had me followed? Not you. Her. Harrington leaned forward. Did you know your gardener gave birth at 17? That she's from the same state, where you adopted your daughter? That the adoption records show remarkable timing coincidences? Ice spread through Raphael's veins. What do you want, James? Want? I'm just looking out for an old friend. Imagine the scandal if this got out. The billionaire CEO romantically involved with the biological mother of his adopted daughter. The press would have a field day. The board might question your judgment. Investors could get nervous. You're suggesting blackmail? Harrington looked offended. I'm suggesting discretion. All I ask is that you reconsider your position on the Tokyo expansion. Step aside, let Meridian take the lead. A simple business decision that protects everyone's interests. Raphael stood, anger replacing shock. Get out. Think carefully, Raphael, your pristine reputation. I said get out. Raphael's voice was deadly calm. And understand this. If you ever threaten my family again, I will dismantle your company. Piece by piece. I have the resources and the connections to do it. After Harrington left, Raphael cancelled his remaining meetings and headed home. The confrontation had crystallized something he'd been avoiding. This wasn't just about him anymore, or even just about Amelia. It was about all three of them, the fragile new reality they were building together. And now, external threats were gathering, At home, he found Dr. Harrison finishing a session with Amelia in the solarium. The therapist reported another breakthrough. Amelia had talked about the accident for the first time, expressing not just grief for her mother, but guilt for surviving. "Where's Sarah?" Raphael asked, noticing her absence from the garden. "She left early," Mrs. Peterson informed him. "She seemed upset." Raphael found a note in his study. "I need some time. Call me when you're ready to talk. Sarah." That evening, as a spring storm battered the brownstone, Raphael sat with Amelia in the kitchen. They were making blueberry pancakes together, his latest attempt to connect with his daughter through activities she enjoyed. "Dad?" Amelia asked, her small hands carefully measuring flour. "Is Sarah coming back?" Raphael hesitated. "Why do you ask?" "She seemed sad yesterday, and she hugged me extra long when she left." "Sarah has some personal matters to deal with," he answered. Carefully, Amelia stirred the batter with concentration. "I think she likes us, like really likes us." "What makes you say that?" "She looks at you the way Mom used to." Amelia's observation was delivered with the straightforward insight of childhood. "And she looks at me like I'm special." Raphael felt his chest tighten. "You are special, Amelia." "I know," she said simply. "But most people look at the wheelchair first. Sarah sees me." Later, after Amelia was asleep, Raphael called Sarah. When she answered, her voice was guarded. "Can we talk?" he asked. "In person?" They agreed to meet at a small cafe in Brooklyn the next morning, neutral territory away from the brownstone and its complex emotions. Sarah was already there when Raphael arrived, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug, her expression apprehensive. He slid into the seat across from her, ordering coffee from the waiting server before speaking. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began. "So have I," Sarah said, "and I've made a decision. I'm going to step back, Raphael. It's not fair to you or Amelia to continue this complicated situation. I've already found a replacement gardener who can take over the project." "Is that what you want?" She looked away. "What I want doesn't matter. What's best for Amelia does." "And what if what's best for Amelia is having you in her life?" Raphael took a deep breath. "I spoke with Dr. Harrison at length. She believes that your connection with Amelia has been the key to her recovery, that severing it now could be devastating. But the deception was understandable, given the circumstances." Raphael surprised himself with his words. The anger and sense of betrayal had shifted during the sleepless nights of consideration. "You didn't seek us out deliberately, and once you found Amelia, you didn't try to take her away or reveal yourself without permission. You just loved her, helped her heal." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I never expected to find her, and I never expected to care about you both so much." Raphael reached across the table, taking her hand. "We need to figure this out together, but first there's something you should know." He told her about Harrington's visit, the implicit threat, the potential for public exposure. He would really use a child as leverage for a business deal? Sarah asked, horrified. "Some men value power above all else," Raphael replied. "I've spent most of my life being one of them." "What are you going to do?" "About Harrington? Nothing yet. He made threats but has no proof of anything inappropriate." "About us?" Raphael squeezed her hand gently. "That depends on what you want, Sarah. I want Amelia to be happy and healthy. I want her to know she's loved." "And beyond that?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "I want to be honest. With Amelia, with you, with myself. No more secrets." Raphael nodded slowly. "Then we tell her. Together." The decision made, they spent hours discussing how to approach Amelia with the truth. Raphael insisted on having Dr. Harrison present to help navigate the emotional complexities. They agreed to wait until the weekend, giving themselves time to prepare. But life rarely follows careful plans. The next day, Raphael received an urgent call from Mrs. Peterson. "Mr. Bello, you need to come home immediately. There's a reporter here asking questions about Sarah and Amelia." Raphael rushed home to find a woman from the National Register in his foyer. somehow having talked her way past security. Mrs. Peterson had wisely kept Amelia upstairs and away from the commotion. "Mr. Bellow," the reporter began, "we've received information about your daughter's biological mother working in your home. Under false pretenses, would you care to comment?" "I would care to have you removed from my property," Raphael replied coldly. "Johnson, please escort this person out and inform building security of the breach." After the reporter was gone, Raphael called Sarah and then his attorney. By evening, the story had broken online. Billionaire's secret: adopted daughter's birth mother found working as family gardener. The article was filled with insinuations and half-truths, painting Sarah as a schemer who had infiltrated the Bellow household, and Raphael as either a villain or a fool, depending on which paragraph one read. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said when she arrived at the brownstone that night, summoned for an emergency meeting with Raphael and his crisis management team. "This is all my fault." "It's Harrington's fault," Raphael corrected her, "and it's going to backfire on him spectacularly." The PR team prepared statements and legal sent cease and desist letters, but Raphael's primary concern was Amelia. With the media circus intensifying outside their home, they had no choice but to tell her the truth immediately, before she could hear it from someone else or glimpse a headline. In the solarium, with Dr. Harrison present, Raphael and Sarah sat with Amelia as the rain continued to pour outside, mimicking the emotional storm within. "Sweetheart," Raphael began gently, "Sarah and I have something important to talk to you about." Amelia looked between them, suddenly serious. "Are you getting married?" The unexpected question startled both adults. "No," Raphael answered. "This is about something else, something about your birth." Carefully, with Dr. Harrison guiding the conversation when needed, they explained the truth that Sarah had given birth to Amelia 13 years ago, had made the painful decision to place her for adoption, and had discovered their connection only after beginning work at the brownstone. Amelia listened quietly, her expression unreadable. When they finished, she remained silent for long moments. "Amelia," Sarah prompted gently, "I know this is a lot to take in. If you're angry or confused or have questions, that's all okay." "Did you know?" Amelia finally asked, looking at Raphael. "When you hired her?" "No," he answered truthfully. "I found out only recently." Amelia turned to Sarah. "Did you look for me before?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Every year on your birthday, but closed adoptions make it very difficult. Finding you here, it was like a miracle I never expected." "Is that why you helped me? I helped you because you needed help," Sarah said firmly. "Finding out who you were to me, that just made me want to help even more, but I would have cared about you no matter." "What?" Amelia considered this, then asked the question that frightened them all. "Do I have to choose between you?" "No," Raphael said quickly, moving to kneel beside her wheelchair. "Sarah and I both want what's best for you. No one is taking you away from anyone." "Your dad is your dad," Sarah affirmed. "That will never change." Amelia looked between them, her young face showing wisdom beyond her years. I think I need some time to think about everything." Dr. Harrison spoke for the first time. "That's very mature, Amelia. Taking time to process big feelings is exactly right." As the therapist took Amelia upstairs, Raphael and Sarah remained in the solarium, the rain finally beginning to ease outside. "What now?" Sarah asked quietly. Raphael rubbed his temples. "Now we weather the storm. The media will eventually lose interest when a bigger story comes along. Harrington will back off when he realizes I won't be intimidated. And us. You, me, Amelia? That depends partly on her, and partly on us." Raphael turned to face Sarah fully. "I've spent my life building walls, around my company, around my emotions. Elizabeth was the only one who ever truly got past them. Until now." Sarah met his gaze. "I never planned any of this." "I know, but now that we're here." Raphael took her hand. "I don't want to lose what we've found, all three of us." The days that followed were challenging. Reporters camped outside the brownstone. Gossip shows speculated wildly about the truth behind the story. Raphael's board called an emergency meeting, concerned about the company's image. Through it all, the three of them closed ranks, protecting each other and the fragile new reality they were building. Amelia, after her initial shock, began asking questions about Sarah's childhood, about her birth, about the circumstances of her adoption. Each honest answer seemed to strengthen rather than weaken their unusual bond. 2 weeks after the story broke, Raphael made a decision that shocked the business world. He announced he was stepping down as CEO of Bello Enterprises, retaining his position as chairman of the board, but relinquishing day-to-day control to focus on family priorities. That same day, he held a press conference, the only one he would give on the matter. "My private life is just that, private," he told the assembled journalists. "But I will say this, family comes in many forms. Mine may be unconventional, but it is built on love, honesty, and the well-being of my daughter. That is all I have to say on the matter." By summer, the media had indeed moved on to fresher scandals. Harrington's attempt at leveraging the situation had backfired when several of his own business practices came under scrutiny following anonymous tips to regulatory agencies. The Bello garden bloomed in riotous color, Sarah's vision fully realized at last. Amelia had begun a new physical therapy regimen that showed promise for partial recovery of movement in her legs. And Raphael found himself experiencing something he had forgotten existed: contentment. One evening in June, as fireflies began to appear in the garden twilight, the three of them sat on the patio enjoying dessert after dinner. Amelia, who had been unusually thoughtful all day, suddenly spoke up. "I've been thinking," she announced, "about names." Raphael and Sarah exchanged a glance. "What about them?" Sarah asked. "Well, I've always been Amelia Elizabeth Bello, but now I know more about where I came from." She looked at Sarah. "Would it be okay if I added Winters somewhere in my name? Not changing anything, just adding." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I would be honored." "Amelia Elizabeth Winters Bello," Raphael tested the name. "It has a beautiful sound to it." "Like our family," Amelia said simply. "Different parts that go together." Later, after Amelia had gone to bed, Raphael found Sarah in the garden, sitting on the bench beneath the Japanese maple. He joined her, taking her hand naturally now. "She's extraordinary," Sarah said softly. "She is," Raphael agreed, "and she's lucky to have both of us." "What about you?" Sarah turned to face him. "After everything that's happened, the upheaval to your life, your career." Raphael considered the question seriously. "I spent decades chasing success, defining myself by acquisitions and profits. It took losing Elizabeth, almost losing Amelia, and then finding you to understand what actually matters." In the soft garden light, he studied her face. The freckles he now found endearing, the auburn hair that caught the last rays of sunset, the eyes that saw him truly. "I love you," he said simply. "Not because you gave me Amelia, but because you helped me remember how to live." Sarah's smile bloomed like the most precious flower in the garden. "I love you too." Their kiss was gentle, a promise rather than a passion, the beginning of something built on solid ground rather than shifting sand. They couldn't know what challenges still lay ahead. Amelia's road to recovery would have setbacks. The complicated logistics of their unorthodox family would require patience and creativity. The world would not always understand or approve. But in the garden that had once been dead and was now vibrantly alive, three people who had been broken in different ways had found healing. Together. And that, Raphael realized, was the greatest luxury of all, not the penthouse views or private jets or billion-dollar deals, but the simple, profound gift of a second chance at love and family. 1 month later, while organizing old files in preparation for moving to a smaller, more comfortable home in Brooklyn, Raphael discovered a letter he'd never seen before. It had been tucked inside one of Elizabeth's journals, dated just weeks before the accident. With trembling hands, he unfolded it. "My dearest Raphael, it began in Elizabeth's elegant handwriting. "If you're reading this, something has happened. To me. I've had a strange feeling lately, a premonition perhaps that has compelled me to write these words." Raphael sank into a chair, tears blurring his vision. "You've always been strong for everyone else, carrying the weight of your father's expectations, your own ambitions, and our family's needs. But strength isn't just about endurance, my love. True strength is knowing when to let new light into the darkness." He wiped his eyes, continuing to read. "If I'm gone, don't shut yourself away in grief. Don't hide behind work or duty. Find the courage to open your heart again, to let Amelia see that love continues even after loss. Promise me that when the right moment comes, you'll recognize it and be brave enough to embrace a new chapter." In the garden outside, he could hear Sarah and Amelia laughing as they planted new bulbs for fall flowering. The sound drifted through the open window like music. "I will always be part of you both," Elizabeth's letter concluded. "But your story shouldn't end with me. Live, Raphael, love again. Show our daughter that the most beautiful gardens often grow from the most difficult seasons." Raphael folded the letter carefully and placed it in his pocket. Then he walked outside to join his family, stepping into the sunlight with an open heart and the certainty that somehow Elizabeth would approve of the garden of second chances they were cultivating together. Dear listeners, we hope Raphael, Sarah, and Amelia's journey touched your heart. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow from the most broken places, and that family isn't always defined by conventional boundaries, but by love, courage, and second chances. For more emotionally powerful stories, like this one, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives. Find it by clicking the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring unique stories that explore life's complexities in all their rich